She was forbidden to read or pray. Saint Teresa built a convent that shocked all of Spain full script. Cozy builds, cinematic ASMR construction. The road into Ávila is made of dust and old intention. I have walked it before, as a child, as a novice, as a woman grown into the habit of Carmel. But today, it feels different beneath my sandals. Today, I am walking towards something I cannot yet name. The October sky is pale and enormous over the meseta, that great flat table of Castile that stretches in every direction like a held breath. The mountains to the north are already edged with snow, blue-white and remote, watching everything below with the indifference of stone. My cloak is thin. The wind cuts across the open road without apology. I carry very little. A small bundle with tools borrowed from the convent's storeroom. A trowel, a chisel, a length of cord. A leather satchel with a few papers, none of them official,
we have work to do.
None of them signed by anyone with authority over me. And inside my chest, folded more tightly than any document, the image that has been pressing against my ribs for 3 years. A small house, a house of prayer. A community of women who choose silence not because they are ordered to, but because they want to. They have told me no. They have told me no in Spanish and in Latin. They have told me no with letters and with silence, and with the particular kind of smile that men reserve for women who are trying to build something. I walk faster. The plot is on the edge of the city, past the cathedral quarter, past the market, past the point where the cobblestones give way to packed earth, and the houses thin out into garden walls and neglect. Someone's cousin sold it to my brother for almost nothing because no one wanted it. I will learn why no one wanted it very soon. But for now, as I round the last bend in the track and see it for the first time in morning light, what I feel is not disappointment. What I feel is recognition. The building, if it can be called that, is a low structure of pale limestone and crumbling mortar, 3 rooms collapsed into 2, a roof that has given up on one side and simply left. The courtyard is choked with dry grass and old vine, the kind of vine that has been growing untended for so long it has become structural. It holds part of the eastern wall up with its twisted arms. There is a well in the center of the courtyard that may or may not still reach water. There are stones everywhere, tumbled from what must once have been a garden wall. The soil is pale and thin, the color of old parchment. A sparrow lands on a broken beam and tilts its head at me. I set down my bundle. I breathe in. The air smells of dry earth and time and something older, something mineral, like the inside of a church that has been locked for many years. Not a bad smell, a waiting smell. I take out the cord and begin to measure. There is a particular quality to this kind of work, the first measurement of a space that doesn't yet exist, that I have come to understand as a form of prayer. You are not looking at what is. You are looking at what could be, and you are asking it gently, with a piece of cord and an honest eye,
God,
whether it will cooperate. The courtyard is larger than I expected once I clear the vine in my mind and see its bones. 12 paces across, perhaps 14 along the south wall. Enough. More than enough, if we are careful. I am always careful. I begin with the rubble. There is no elegant way to describe moving stone. You bend, you grip, you straighten, you bend again. The limestone is rough against my palms and heavier than it looks. It always is. And within the first hour my shoulders are aching and my hands are striped with dust. I stack the usable pieces along the western edge, away from the shade of the ruined roof. Each stone I touch has a history I will never know. Someone quarried it. Someone shaped it. Someone mortared it into a wall that stood for decades before time and inattention brought it down. I am not its first builder. I remind myself of this when the pile seems too large and my arms seem too small. By midday, I have cleared a path through the courtyard. The well, when I lower a stone into it on a length of cord, gives back a sound. A soft, distant splash. It still reaches water. I stand there for a moment with my eyes closed, listening to the echo fade, and I feel something shift in my chest. Not relief exactly, but confirmation. The land is not against me. I eat the bread I brought in the shade of the standing wall. The sparrow returns. I do not share the bread. I explain this to the sparrow, and it does not seem offended. The first sister arrives in the afternoon. Isabel, small and precise, who has been with me in this plan since the beginning. who has copied letters and hidden correspondence and worn the same patient expression through every official refusal.
The damage here is
She
worse
comes
than
around the corner of
anticipated.
the outer wall
I
and
see
stops
it.
when she sees what I
Let's
have
start
already
with shoring
moved,
it up.
what I have already cleared. And for a moment she just stands there. "You started without me," she says. "I started with the easy part," I say, which is not entirely true. She sets down her own bundle. She has brought more tools, a second trowel, a small handsaw, a pouch of lime, and rolls up her sleeves without another word. This is why I love her. Not a single unnecessary word. We spend the rest of the afternoon assessing the walls. The south-facing wall is the best.
The best on the
thick,
site.
intact.
Finally.
Its mortar still holding with authority. I press my palm against it and feel nothing move.
Still strong.
Good. The north
Reliable
wall is
foundation.
patchwork, repaired
It's
by
much
different
deeper than
hands
I
over
thought.
different decades, and some of those repairs are worse than what they replaced. The
This
mortar
section
there
is
is
worse than
pale and
expected.
crumbling, and in one place I can push my finger into a joint and feel it give. That section will need to come down and go back up properly. The east wall,
The vine is
the one the
holding
vine
it.
is holding,
Yes.
is the most uncertain.
Leave it.
We agree,
work
Isabel
around
and
it.
I, without much debate, to leave the vine in place for now. It knows something about that wall that we don't yet. By the time the light goes amber and long, I have the shape of the first
north wall
phase
needs
clear in my
rebuilding,
mind.
And the
We
roof
need
over there,
a
and the
roof
well
over
cover.
the two
3
standing rooms
priorities.
before
exactly.
the rains
Cold
come.
air is
A
settling.
reinforced north wall, the well cleared and covered. And then, if time allows, the beginning of the small chapel. Just
All right,
the walls,
23
just the footprint,
and
so
a
that
half.
when the others arrive,
Perfect
they
for
arrive
the
to
truss
something
stand.
that already looks like what it is trying to become. We have perhaps 3 weeks before the rains. I sleep that first night on the floor of the better room, wrapped in my cloak, on a blanket Isabel has brought. The limestone floor is cold and uncompromising, and I sleep better than I have in years. Day 2 begins before dawn, with fog. Ávila in October, fogs like a man who has been holding his breath all summer. All at once, completely, without apology. The courtyard disappears into white. I can hear the city waking somewhere beyond the walls. A cart, a dog, a bell from the cathedral quarter. But I cannot see past the well. I find this clarifying. The world is very small this morning. Just the space between my hands and the stone in front of me. The north wall comes down in sections. I have done enough building to know that demolishing is not the opposite of building. It is a form of it, and it requires the same attention. A wall that comes down badly can take the walls beside it. So I work slowly, removing stone by stone from the worst section, setting each piece aside. The mortar between them is the color of ash and crumbles at a touch. Some of this stone is salvageable. Some of it has fractured along ancient lines and will only serve as rubble fill. Isabel is
mortar
mixing
is ready.
lime and sand in a wooden bucket she found in the ruins of the third
Please
room.
move aside,
The
goats.
smell of fresh lime is sharp and clean, almost sweet, cutting through the fog. There is a particular ritual to watching lime mix. The slow turning, the way the material transforms from powder to paste, to something that looks almost alive, moving in thick folds. She works steadily, humming a psalm under her breath. Not loudly, just enough for herself. I notice things like this. The way people carry their faith when they think no one is watching. Isabel carries hers in her hands. The stone comes down through the morning. By midday, the bad section is gone, a gap in the north wall open to the fog, and I can see through it to the scrubby field beyond. 2 goats look back at me through the gap, with the serene indifference of goats everywhere. I look at them. They look at me. We reach no conclusions.
Keep
The
your back
rebuild
straight,
begins
mind the weight.
immediately. I want the new mortar to begin curing
Good,
before the
plenty of
temperature
mortar
drops at
needed for
night.
this one.
The replacement stones go back in courses, flat face out, irregular face in, each course offset from the one below so no vertical joint runs straight through.
The plum is
This
true.
is the basic logic of masonry, and it is thousands of
Only
years
2
old,
courses
and it
left.
works because it has to work, because the alternative is a wall that falls. I pack each joint with fresh mortar, pressing it in with the trowel, smoothing it flush. The sound of the trowel scraping stone is one of the most satisfying sounds I know. Decisive, real. One of the goats has come through the gap to investigate. I put it back out. It comes back. I put it back out again. This continues for some time. By late afternoon, the new section is 3 courses high, and I'm satisfied with how it is going. The mortar is the right consistency. Not too wet, not stiff enough to crack as it's worked. Each joint is clean. The wall is already beginning to look like itself again. That night, after Isabel has gone back to the convent to maintain appearances, I sit by a small fire I have made from the rotten timber of the collapsed roof section. The wood is old and dry and burns quickly, throwing more light than heat, and in the dancing edge of it the courtyard looks like something from the inside of a dream. The cleared ground, the stack of waiting stone, the well with its new covering of timber planks, the gap in the north wall now rising steadily back to its original height. The fog has lifted. The stars over Castile are extraordinary. There is no word in Spanish or Latin for the exact quality of that darkness, the depth of it, the way it makes you feel both very small and very attended to. I am not supposed to be here. There are letters. There are orders. There is a bishop who has received a very politely worded complaint from certain prominent members of the existing Carmelite establishment, suggesting that a particular woman of their order has become, shall we say, ungovernable. There is an inquisitor somewhere who has received a second-hand report about mystical experiences that he would very much like to discuss with me at his convenience. There is the prioress of the Incarnation, who is technically my superior, who has been told by me that I am visiting family and who has been too kind, or too wise, or too tired of arguing with me to ask further questions. None of them are here. None of them are looking at these stars. I put another piece of wood on the fire. Day 5. And the first real crisis.
Yes.
I have begun removing the collapsed section of roof, the failed timbers, the fallen tiles, the compacted debris of what was once a ceiling and is now a floor covering of historical materials. The work is slow because I want to save the roof tiles. They are old, terracotta, good hand-thrown clay fired to a warm red-brown, and each one that survives the removal is one I do not have to pay for. So I take them up one by one, tapping each free with the wooden handle of the chisel, lifting carefully, setting aside. It is during this work that I find the problem. The main beam, the beam that would have supported the entire roofline of this section, has not simply failed at one point. It has rotted from the inside. I find this by pressing my thumb into the wood at a spot that looks merely weathered and feeling it give with a soft, terrible sinking. I press in 3 more places, the same. I take the chisel and tap along the length of the beam and listen to the sound change from solid to hollow, hollow to solid, and then hollow again.
Too far
the
gone.
rot is extensive.
It has to be replaced.
This beam cannot be salvaged.
Yes, the
I sit back on my
correct.
heels and look at it. A
That's
single
it,
main
perfectly
beam of this
divided.
length. 4 meters at least, perhaps 5. In seasoned hardwood is not something you borrow from a convent storeroom. It costs money. We have almost no money. What we have is the sum of what my brother managed to extract from the sale of his silverware, and what Isabel and the other sisters have sewn into the hems of their spare habits, and what a very generous woman in Toledo sent us after hearing about the project through 2 intermediaries and a letter that technically doesn't mention me by name. I sit with this problem for the rest of the afternoon.
Morning, brother.
By evening, I have a
like you're right
solution
on
of
time.
sorts. Not
Yes,
elegant,
sister, I brought the
but
canvas.
real. The 2 side rooms, the ones with their roofs still partially intact, use a different structural approach. Instead of a single long beam, they use a series of shorter cross beams, bridging a narrower span. I cannot replicate the original single beam design with the materials I have, but I can redesign the roof structure of this central section to use shorter spans, which means adding a central support column, which means the interior will have a post in the middle of it, which is not ideal for a chapel, but is entirely workable for a cloister or a common room. I walk the
spans
space
are
with my
perfect.
cord
We
again,
just need to fit
thinking
the
in 3
last beam
dimensions, trying to see
column.
what the room wants to become, rather than what I had planned
it
it to
slow.
be.
Slow.
Sometimes a building
Slow.
shows you its true design
Just
by
a
taking
little
away
more.
the one you
Now?
thought it wanted.
Good. Keep
The central
tension.
column will be stone.
Slow
I spend the next day
and
building it
steady.
up from the salvaged
almost
rubble.
there.
A rough pier
more
about
pull.
40 centimeters square, set on a flat base stone that I find half buried at the corner of the courtyard. The mortar I use is thicker than for wall work. It needs to fill more irregular gaps, needs to set quickly under the weight above. I tamp each course down firmly, checking the plumb with a weighted cord, adjusting, checking again. The cord swings in the cold morning air. The shadow it casts on the pale stone is perfectly
We need to finish
uselessly
this
beautiful.
wall. Right.
Anna arrives on day 7, which is a Sunday. which means she has told the gatekeeper she is visiting a sick relative outside the walls. She's not the best builder of the three of us. Her hands are not as practiced with the trowel, but she is the tallest, and right now I need height more than technique. We spend the day working on the roof frame together, two of us steadying the new crossbeams while the third secures them at the wall plates. The beams are shorter sections of timber I have negotiated from a carpenter in the lower city. A man who asked no questions about why a woman in a religious habit needed 8 lengths of pine at an irregular hour, which I choose to interpret as professional courtesy rather than indifference. The beams go up slowly. Timberwork has its own specific language of risk. A beam at height that shifts or rolls can take a great deal with it. And I am more careful here than I have been anywhere else in the project. Each beam goes up on a rope, hand over hand, until it reaches the wall plates. And then Anna holds it steady while I set the iron spike that will pin it in place, driving it with the mallet in short, firm strokes. The sound of iron on iron carries across the courtyard and up into the cold air. It sounds, I think, like something beginning. By late afternoon, the frame is complete. I stand in the center of the room beneath the bare ribs of the new roof and look up through them at the sky. And the light is coming through in long, angled beams, the color of old gold, and the stone column rises beside me steady as a promise kept, and I breathe in the smell of fresh-cut pine and old limestone, and the particular mineral damp of Castilian earth. And I feel something I do not have a name for in any language, something that is neither pride nor relief nor gratitude, but contains all three and is larger than any of them. Anna says, "We should start on the tiles before we lose the light." She is right. I was having a feeling. The feelings can wait. The tiles go on in the old Roman fashion, alternating convex and concave, each course lapping the one below. The joints staggered so no water has a straight path through. I have done this once before, in a different city, under different circumstances, and the memory comes back to me through my hands rather than my mind. The particular angle at which you set the concave tile before lowering the convex one over it, the pressure you need to bed it without cracking. The terracotta is cool and slightly rough against my fingertips. Each tile settles with a soft, decisive click. The first rain comes on the 11th day. It arrives in the night, quietly, without the usual warning of wind. Just a sound on the new tiles, like a conversation starting in a room overhead. Soft and ongoing. I lie on my blanket on the stone floor and listen to it. The sound moves across the roof in patterns that tell me what I need to know. The tiles are holding, the joints are sealed, the water is running off the eaves rather than through them. One corner of the south room, not my room, but the room we have designated for the chapel, is getting a drip from somewhere in the old section of roof that I have not yet repaired. I hear it. A small, patient sound. A drop every 4 or 5 seconds, striking something that rings slightly. I make a note in my mind to fix it tomorrow. But the new section, my section, the rebuilt room, is dry. I close my eyes. I would like to tell you that at this point everything became easier. But this is not that kind of story. The Bishop of Ávila, a conscientious man named Álvaro de Mendoza, receives a formal letter on the 13th day of our work. The letter comes from 2 separate parties, the City Council and a consortium of noble families whose properties border our plot. And it raises, in the careful language that educated men use when they mean to prevent something without seeming to prevent it, several concerns. Canonical irregularities, questions of proper enclosure, the matter of whether a woman of an existing order can simply decide to establish a second house of that order without the permission of the orders general, the Holy See, and the relevant diocesan authorities, and also, separately, the matter of whether she can do so while technically on leave from her convent under the pretense of visiting an ailing cousin. I do not read this letter. I learn about it afterward. On the 13th day itself, I am working on the chapel room. The drip in the corner has been fixed, a matter of 2 tiles repositioned, and a length of lead flashing hammered into the joint, satisfying work, the kind of problem that yields completely to careful attention. The chapel room is the smallest of the 3 rooms, perhaps 4 meters by 5, with a single window opening to the east. It is also the most intact. The walls are good. The floor is level. and someone,
Almost
at some
done
point in the
here.
building's long history,
This chapel
carved a
will
small
be
niche into the
beautiful.
south wall that is exactly the right size for a statue of the Virgin.
The floor
This
is
cannot
done.
be coincidence.
Now we wait.
I choose not to examine this belief too closely. I am making the floor. The existing floor is beaten earth, swept flat at some point but long since roughened by weather and neglect, uneven enough to trip on, cold in a way that goes beyond temperature,
Look at that.
into
The
something
lean is
almost
worse now.
moral. I have
It's
found
the
in the
rain.
ruins of the
The
third
base
room
is
a
unstable.
cache of old
The
floor
soil is
tiles,
saturated here.
small, square,
The wall has
fired in a
shifted.
darker
The
terracotta
base is
than the roof
unstable.
tiles.
The
Their
lean is
glaze
worse
long
than I
since
thought.
worn to a matte
It's
finish
solid. It's
that
actually
catches the
holding
light
these
without
stones.
throwing it back. There are enough, just barely. I spend 2 full days setting them. The work is meditative in the
The lean
truest
is worse than we
sense.
thought.
You prepare
We'll
the
need a
bed,
flying buttress
a
here.
thin
Yes,
layer of
to
mixed
anchor
lime and
deep.
sand,
We
leveled
can
carefully,
stabilize it.
checked with a straight board. And then you set each tile by hand, pressing it in with a firm, even pressure, tapping it level with the wooden handle of the trowel. The grout goes in last, worked into the joints with a rag, cleaned off the tile surface before it sets. The clay smell of the tiles and the sharp smell of the lime together makes something almost edible, warm and mineral and ancient. I work from the altar wall toward the door, so I am never stepping on what I have just laid. The pattern is simple, offset courses, the most reliable pattern there is. The same pattern they have been using in this country for 2,000 years, because it works, and it is beautiful, and those two things are not as separate as people think. When I reach the door and turn around, the floor is done. The light from the east window falls across it in a long stripe, and the tiles glow, and the niche in the south wall waits for its statue, and the room is not finished, but it is already, unmistakably, a chapel. I sit down in the doorway and let myself feel this for a moment. Then Anna appears at my shoulder with a bucket of mortar and says, "The east courtyard wall is starting to lean again," and the moment ends, as all moments do, and I get up.
Yes.
The east courtyard wall, the one the vine has been holding,
It holds.
has decided, with the rain softening the
it's
ground,
working.
to make its structural instability more visible. There is a lean to it now that I did not see before, a slight but definite tilt outward, the base seeming to push away from the courtyard as the saturated earth swells beneath it. I look at it for a long time. The vine, to its credit, is holding. The vine is frankly performing better than I expected. But a vine cannot hold a wall forever. This requires buttresses. A buttress is one of the oldest ideas in architecture, and it is old because it is correct. You cannot push against a leaning wall from inside. You need to push from outside, at an angle, with mass and geometry doing the work that mortar alone cannot. I have seen them on every cathedral I have ever visited, those great stone fins flying out from the walls, and I have never stood beneath one without feeling a kind of gratitude for whoever first understood that a wall can be held up by something that stands at right angles to it. My buttresses will be smaller than cathedral buttresses. They will be made of salvaged stone. They will be inelegant, but they will work. I spend 3 days on the east wall. First, I dig the footings for
Good to
3
see
buttress
you.
piers, going
Here's the
down until I
crate.
find solid
Careful, it's
ground
heavy.
below the
Don't
saturated
worry, I
layer,
have it.
about 40
Perfect.
centimeters,
Take
which
a
feels
breath.
like enough given the height of the wall. I fill the footing trenches with large rubble stones set in thick mortar, letting each course cure before loading it, building up slowly. The stone I use for the buttress faces is the roughest, least regular material I have.
Beautiful.
The pieces that
Just
don't
as
fit
we
anywhere
asked
else.
for.
Because buttresses are about
May this
weight
offering
and geometry,
find peace
not
here.
finish. Each buttress leans back against the wall at roughly 60 degrees, a short diagonal pier that transfers the wall's outward thrust down into the ground. I set the connection between buttress and wall carefully, cutting a rough
It
joint
fits.
where the two meet so the mortar has something to grip, and I pack this joint with extra care, working the mixture
It's
deep
perfect.
into the angle with my fingers until it feels solid. By the 3rd day, the buttresses are up, the mortar is curing, and the east wall has stopped moving. I stand back and look at it. Vine, buttresses, old limestone, pale mortar. It looks like something that has been repaired many
mule
times
needs
by people who
water.
cared about it.
Let's get it to
That
him
is,
quickly.
I think, the best way for a building to look. The vine, apparently satisfied, puts out 3 new leaves. 16 days in, Beatrice arrives. She is the 4th of the original group, the one who took longest to obtain leave from her superior. the one who wrote me a letter that arrived on the same day as a letter from the bishop's office. I have been trying to decide whether this is symbolically meaningful. And she arrives in the late afternoon with a mule, which she has borrowed from a farmer cousin. And on the mule is strapped a wooden crate that contains, when we open it, the following things: a small bronze bell, a length of woven fabric, deep blue, for the altar, an iron candlestick with 7 arms, and wrapped in a cloth at the bottom of the crate, a small carved image of the Virgin in painted wood, perhaps 30 centimeters tall, her hands folded, her expression composed. I look at the statue for a long moment. I look at the niche in the south wall of the chapel. I carry it there and set it in the niche, and it fits as though the niche was made for it, which in some sense I believe it was. We stand in the doorway of the chapel. 4 women, tired, covered in mortar dust and lime and the particular pale Castilian earth that works its way into everything, and look at the image in the niche and the new floor and the east window beginning to let. In the long light of late afternoon, and nobody says anything for a while, which is the correct response. Then Beatrice says, "The mule needs water." We see to the mule. The following days have a different quality to them. There are 4 of us now, which means that work that required one person 3 trips requires 1 trip and 4 hands. The courtyard begins to take shape as a garden. Not yet a garden, but the suggestion of one. I have been thinking about water. A cloister garden needs water not just for the people, but for the plants, for the sense of life and renewal that a religious community requires in its daily visual field. And the well is good, but the well requires effort and rope and a bucket every time. And there is a better solution if we can manage it. There is a channel, the old acequia, the Moorish irrigation system, that runs along the northern edge of the property, or used to, before it silted up and was forgotten. I find its ghost in the form of a slight depression in the earth that runs from the northwest corner of the plot to the wall and disappears into rubble. 2 days of digging reveal the old clay pipe sections, hand-thrown, some cracked but many still whole, set in a shallow trench at a slight gradient. I clear the channel. I replace the cracked sections with new pipe I fire myself in a small kiln I build from loose stones in the corner of the yard. The clay I find at the bottom of the east wall excavation, red-brown and workable, mixed with a little sand to open it. Firing small pipe sections doesn't require great heat. You need sustained warmth, not a furnace. And I maintain the fire through a long afternoon and into the evening, feeding it carefully, adjusting the airflow with flat stones to keep the temperature even. The new pipe sections come out imperfect but intact.
The firing works.
I let them cool overnight, test them by filling them with water from the well and watching for seepage.
The pipe is
and then
sound.
I set them into the channel with
Ready
mortar
for the
joints
channel.
and rebuild the trench cover of flat stones. The gradient I work out with a length of cord and a weight, stretching the cord from the channel entry point to the courtyard, finding the drop, adjusting the pipe bed until water moves through by gravity alone. When I open the sluice, a simple stone plug at the acequia connection, and watch the water find its way along the channel, into the courtyard,
Water is
into the
coming.
small stone basin I have built in the center near the well, I feel something that is close to joy, and is perhaps its quieter, more reliable cousin. Beatrice has planted rosemary around the basin already. Small sprigs pressed into the damp earth. They will take. By now we have received 2 official letters and 1 unofficial visit from a man who said he was from the bishop's office and who spent a long time looking at the building and the courtyard and the 4 of us working in it, and eventually went away without saying much, which I choose to interpret as a good sign while acknowledging privately that it may not be. The walls of the cloister corridor are my next project. The original building had no covered walkway around the courtyard, just open ground between the 3 rooms. I want to create one, not for luxury, but for function. A cloister walk that connects the rooms, provides shelter during the rains, and gives the community a place to pray and work during bad weather without retreating indoors entirely. The design is simple. Stone piers set at intervals of perhaps 2 meters, spanned by timber lintels, with the roof extending out from the existing wall on one side and dropping to the piers on the other. Open between the piers to the courtyard. Simple. The piers go up slowly but without complication. They are small and square and require no great engineering, just patience and level courses. I cut the pier stones from the larger rubble pieces, shaping them with the chisel into rough blocks. and the sound of iron on stone rings through the courtyard at intervals through the long mornings. Each strike of the chisel vibrates up through the handle into my palm, and there is a kind of dialogue in it. The stone telling you where it wants to split. The tool following the grain if you are paying attention. Some days, I am paying attention better than others. On a day when I am not paying attention well enough, I split a pier stone incorrectly, and half of it crumbles into gravel.
The pier is growing.
I sit with the gravel in my hands for a moment. Then I add it to the mortar fill pile and find another stone.
Another course finished.
This is the whole of it, really. You find another stone. The lintels span from wall to pier easily. The pine sections are long enough. The span narrow enough that there is no structural drama here. Just careful placement and secure seating.
It's solid.
Over
Good
the
work.
lintels, I lay a thin covering
Almost
of smaller
done with this
timbers,
section.
and over those the
Just
roof
one
tiles
more,
go on
and
as
you can secure
before, the old Roman
Perfect.
alternating
We're making
pattern,
good time.
course by course. The sound of rain on the corridor roof, when the next shower comes, is different from the sound on the main rooms. Lighter, more present, with the open courtyard nearby throwing the sound back in a way that makes the rain feel like something happening around you rather than overhead. I stand in the cloister walk during a shower and listen to it, and it is exactly as good as I imagined it would be. Week 4. This is the week of the gate. A convent needs a gate. Not a gate for keeping people out exactly, though there is some of that, but a gate that marks the threshold between the world and the place that is not the world, the liminal piece of wood or iron that you pass through when you are choosing, consciously, to come inside. The rule of enclosure that I intend this community to follow is strict, stricter than the rule we follow at the Incarnation, which has, over the years, become rather flexible about who comes and goes and when. The strictness is not punishment. The strictness
Got
is
it.
protection.
Just a little further.
It creates the condition
let's get it down.
inside which
Thanks, I
silence
needed
and
that.
prayer and real attention become possible. The gate, therefore, matters. I want it made of oak. This is perhaps vanity, but it is the kind of vanity I can argue is practical. Oak weathers well, holds its shape, accepts iron hardware without splitting. The carpenter in the lower city has a section of rough-sawn oak planks, wide boards from an old tree, and I spend an afternoon at his workshop selecting them, running my hand along the grain, checking for shakes and checks. The planks I choose are not perfect, but they are honest. Their imperfections are the kind that come from growth rather than damage. I build the gate in the courtyard, laying the planks across 2 sawhorses borrowed from the carpenter. The gate is made in 2 leaves, 2 panels that meet in the center. Each leaf composed of vertical planks held together by 2 horizontal rails, the whole assembly joined with wooden pegs rather than iron nails, because I want it to move with the seasons without splitting. The holes for the pegs I drill with a brace and bit, and this is one of the most satisfying sounds in all of woodworking. The steady turning of the brace, the clean curl of wood coming up through the bit, the slight resistance just before breakthrough. I make each peg slightly tapered, so it drives in tight and stays. The hinges are iron, made by a smith in the market quarter who asks, with the air of a man who has learned not to ask certain questions, whether I need the receipt in my name or another's. I tell him my name is Sister Teresa of
Pouring
Ávila,
now.
and he writes this down without any
Good.
expression
Steady.
whatsoever. Hanging the gate takes most of an afternoon. The masonry at the gateway needed reinforcement first. A stone lintel set in good
Keep it
mortar,
steady.
the
Up a little
jambs
more.
packed and
Right
plumb
there.
true,
Got the top,
and the
shift weight.
hinges need
Don't
to be
drop
set
it.
into the
Alignment.
stone with
Push the bottom.
lead-caulked sockets
Got
rather
it.
than simply
Ooh,
mortared
done.
in, or they will pull free within the year. I melt the lead in a small iron pot over the fire, a careful business that requires patience and good ventilation,
Keep it steady.
and pour it
Now.
around the hinge bolts while Beatrice holds the first leaf steady.
Ready when you
The
are.
lead cools fast in the cold air. I test the socket with a
steady.
firm tug. It does not move.
Got that.
When both leaves are
Perfect
hung
fit.
and swing free and meet cleanly in
done.
the center and latch with the iron bar I have fitted, I stand outside the gate and open it and walk through and close it behind me. The sound of the latch dropping is a complete sentence. There are 32 days of work in this story, and I have told you about some of them, and compressed others, and skipped entirely the day when the mule got into the chapel, and the day when a city official arrived with a written order that I pretended, successfully, not to be present to receive, and the day when the weather was so cold that the mortar would not cure, and we spent the hours instead chanting the
day's
office
done.
by the fire and
Blessed
repairing
be.
tools and talking
Let
about
us
the rule
pray.
we were trying to
Yes,
adopt,
come.
live and why. On the 32nd day, at dawn, The first community gathers. There are 4 of us. Eventually, there will be more. There are women in other cities who have written to me, who have heard through the careful network of letters and intermediaries about what is happening here, who are waiting to see whether it holds. But on this morning it is 4. Isabel and Anna and Beatrice and me, standing in the cloister walk in our habits. The small bell that arrived in Beatrice's crate hung now from a bracket above the gate. The chapel floor clean and the candles lit, and the statue in her niche, and the water moving in its channel across the courtyard with a sound like quiet conversation. We sing lauds. The sound rises into the cold air of the courtyard, and off the walls I have repaired, and through the corridor of the cloister walk I have built, and up into the October sky that is now, this morning, almost cloudless. A blue so deep it seems structural, like something you could build against. I have been told that what I am doing is impossible. I have been told this by bishops and by priors and by learned men with Latin arguments, and by women who meant kindly and were afraid for me, and by my own doubt in the long hours before dawn when the mortar is curing and the next problem has not yet been solved.
Our work is done.
And it would be so simple to let it go,
right.
to go back, to be obedient in the way that is easiest, which is the obedience of the person who does not want anything badly enough to build for it. And yet here is the gate, here is the chapel floor, here is the water in the basin and the rosemary around it, and the voice of Isabel singing the second verse of a psalm that is older than this building, and older than the city it sits inside, and older than the language I am thinking in. Here is the thing I built. I press my palm against the stone of the south wall, the good wall, the wall that was already here when I arrived, the wall I have trusted all along, and I feel nothing move. The mortar is cured. The stone is cold and solid and real. The morning light is coming over the east wall now, long and almost warm, falling across the courtyard in a way that makes the water in the basin flash once, briefly, like a thought arriving. I think about all the women who will come after us. The ones who will live in these rooms and walk this corridor and pass through this gate and sit in this chapel and look at this statue in this niche where a builder 1,000 years ago decided to carve an alcove in the stone, not knowing why, only knowing it felt right. I think about how a building holds everything that happens inside it. The prayers and the arguments and the silences and the grief and the ordinary good days when the mortar sets cleanly and the tiles click into place and the water runs where it is supposed to run. A building is a kind of memory, not a record, not a document. A living, physical memory made of the decision to put this stone here rather than somewhere else, to hang the gate this way, to make the window face east so that the morning comes in first and the chapel glows before anyone in it has spoken a word. We could not be forbidden from this. That is what I understood in the end, that all the letters and orders and conscientious bishops and concerned colleagues could not quite reach, that a woman who builds something is not asking permission for the thing she is building. She is making it present in the world. And once it is present, it simply is. It exists. You can try to dismantle it. But the ground has been broken, the gate has been hung, the water has found its level, and the first morning has already happened. I lower my hand from the wall. Anna is heating something over the small fire in the courtyard. I can smell it now. Something warm and spiced. Something that will shortly be breakfast. Beatrice is adjusting the bell so its clapper moves more freely. Isabel is at the chapel door with her eyes closed and her lips moving. The bell rings once, clear, high, carrying across the pale rooftops of Ávila toward the mountains that are still blue-white with their first snow. Everything begins.